Hello, I'm your host, Efi Pylarinou, and today we're going to be talking about contact centers and generative AI. It's no secret that contact centers are bustling with activity post-COVID, and there's generative AI coming to the rescue to alleviate a lot of the pain points. And I'm excited today to have with us Tyler Pichach, who is part of the worldwide financial services team at Microsoft and is passionate and involved in the deployment of generative AI in contact centers and many more things, but that's our topic today. So I'd like to welcome you, Tyler.
Efi, thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, so let's dive into our topic about how generative AI is used to augment these agents at the contact centers. And as you know, I'm more involved in financial services. So I'm thinking, customer service in banking, in, asset management, in lending, mortgages, all these areas where we have low sort of level queries or complaints, but we might also have much more complicated discussions at the contact centers.
Yeah, so it's a super hot topic, I think, these days. When we're talking to our customers about it, it's amazing because it doesn't matter if they've just gone through a 5-year replacement of their core CCaaS contact center infrastructure, or they've, just done an upgrade to their latest version of chatbot or natural language IVR. There is a tremendous amount of value in thinking about how generative AI technologies can be layered over top of those existing investments. Again, that augment strategy, augmenting the platform they have today, and also augmenting, of course, the services, including the agents and the roles that they do. So it's really changed the game, I think, about how people are thinking about contact center and the value that it can bring to the organization. And so, we think about things across 4 core areas within contact center where generative AI can really play. And maybe this can help, shape the conversation a little bit, Effie, as we go through this. The first area, and for all of our listeners, I'm sure you'll get all of these, but just to kind of roll them up, is around self-service. So we think about chatbots and voice bots. We think about, the handoff to a live agent and how that happens. We also think about things like a single authoring tool that can go across both. The place that generative AI, plays in that arena is really significant. When you think about, fantastic chatbots like the ones that, Bank of America has built, or
Erica.
USDA is great examples, right? But those have taken years, and they had to build manual intents across, those conversations to make it a great chatbot. Today, you could effectively do that in a day because you don't need to build the manual intents. And so it's super exciting. The second area, we call it agent assist AI, standard industry term. Just to kind of clarify, we think about things like real-time text, of course, if it's a chat, or speech to text. We think about real-time sentiment, real-time next best action and next best offer. We think about real-time knowledge search, great area for Gen AI. We think about automatic agent wrap-up notes. Those 2 areas alone, when customers are talking about how do they think about the return on investment of Gen AI, these are, if not the biggest place, the easiest places and the safest places to go through. And I'd love to talk more about that. And we also think about unifying the desktop and automation, again, leveraging Gen AI. The third area that we think about is what we call interaction analytics AI. And so this is, post-contact analytics, looking for trends within the contact center and those that can be used outside the contact center, so in digital channels and physical channels. We think about compliance, how to better, coach our agents. At Microsoft, for example, our quality monitors and our agents, they get the top 5 best phone calls and the top 5 worst phone calls every week delivered to them. Right. And so, probably a lot of your listeners, when they do quality monitoring or coaching, they look for calls based on maybe call length or a customer escalates, but it doesn't mean they're a good call or a bad call. So figuring out what those things look like and building models around that is hugely significant. And so then, we also think about things like, where does the data go? And data is a big piece, right? So how is what you learn from post-contact analytics and your coaching, how does that feed into your routing? Right? How do you route So not based on rules, but based on events, interactions, context, classification, right? Intents. We think about what that means as inputs to better agent skilling, performance management, workforce management. We think about what that means to drive better next best action, next best offer. We think about what it means to drive better self-service and customer segmentation that leads into that self-service. So, again, the whole data story, we could have another hour just talking about that, but it's really significant in how we think about things as a baseline. And then the fourth area that we think about is around fraud. And so, contact centers are a massive hub for fraudsters to be able to do things like phishing, where they're looking for information. And look, generative AI has enabled pretty amazing capabilities around synthetic voice, right? And so
Yes.
right. And so being able to detect that and do something about it, but it's not just that. We also have customers that are, part of their contact centers. They, for example, in financial services, when a customer comes in and says, "Hey, I see a transaction I don't recognize on my credit card. What do I do?" And the agents that speak to them, it routes to a specific queue, and the agents that speak to them, they're like, "Well, I'm not sure if this is fraud or not." So they have to do an investigation. They have to look at a whole bunch of data to be able to figure out if it's fraud. And so again, what a great place for generative AI to pull all of this data so the agents don't have to do it manually. And they can do that in real time, and they can do it as post-call analytics. They can do that to help create case management, to figure out what fraud should be. And then they can use that to help update rules and policies within the fraud engine itself. Again, using generative AI and natural language. So, these are the four areas that we're really focused on in terms of capabilities. We have those both as a, broad brush in terms of our own contact center solution, but also how we augment any contact center solution, any CCaaS, any on-prem, anything to be able to enable these. And it's not just us that are doing, a lot of our partners as well are bringing those capabilities into their solutions as well. So it's really an ecosystem approach.
Amazing. I mean, what's really amazing to me is that this seems to be creating completely new capabilities because of these feedback loops that are going to be enabled, because we are collecting better data, better insights. They're done in ways that were not possible before. There's much less manual work and obviously less burnout, and that can lead to a lot of innovation. Let's go back to the basics of deployment. How critical is that a client, an organization, a bank, or whoever it is in financial services that does want to start deploying generative AI, how critical is it that they have unified CRM systems in order to be able to start leveraging the generative AI capabilities that you've mentioned? And is it an absolute basic requirement? Do we need intelligent dashboards in place? What's the setup that is absolutely needed to prepare for this?
Yeah, so let me take a step back and answer your question based off of, business need is first. Okay.
Yep.
And so, we work quite a bit with customers on articulating the journeys where generative AI could be used. So, for example, across those four areas, what's an overall customer journey, right? So, for example, if it's an insurance and somebody calls in to file a claim, maybe it's a car accident. Hopefully, everyone's okay. But the agent has to ask a whole bunch of questions, and that's taking a lot of time and very costly for that agent to do those things. And so a lot of our customers are saying, wait a second, can we automate that, with a voice bot or a chat bot? And can we go so far, for example, as getting the chatbot or the voice bot to take a picture of the damage. And then we have GPT-4 as an example, which does image recognition and can, really clearly articulate what type of car it is, what type of damage it is, leveraging the customer data. They can even come out with potentially what is potential cost on repairs, where to take all sorts of things that then, those things can then feed to the agent who can maybe complete the call if needed. And then, of course, once the call is finished, then wrap-up notes happen automatically. Maybe the agent needs to search for something. Those can be spoon-fed to the agent, cuts down an AHT, reduces cost. And then, of course, there's analytics and lots of things that happen at the end of that, like across those four areas. So again, I gave you a really simplified journey of an insurance use case. If we did it for banking, it could be different. Asset servicing could be different as well. The bottom line is organizations have to figure out what are the key areas that have the largest return on investment first. And then they have to be able to go back within the organizations and say, look, they may not be using generative AI. And so they need to go to their InfoSec teams, their security teams, and make sure they're comfortable with it. Like I would actually suggest they bring them along for those journeys so they understand, the InfoSec people understand where it should be used and why and the business value that it provides, because that return on investment is going to be important. And I think it's really important for organizations to understand the data flow and the security around that. For example, we don't use, customer data to train any of the large language models that we have. Those are like a baseline. So think about, you're starting with, for example, an AI that is a university graduate, as an example, and then you layer your own data over top of that. It's really important. So wherever that data happens to be. Now, if you're focused on what we're seeing really in the environment quite significantly, which is those two core use cases around knowledge search and agent wrap-up notes, automating agent wrap-up notes, post-contact summarization. There's a few different ways of thinking about how to do that. But certainly if customers are using, for example, Microsoft Dynamics CRM already, and their data and their policies and procedures are in SharePoint and also partially in Microsoft Dynamics customer service, then yes, it's a great place to start, because you effectively just need to turn a switch and you'll have those capabilities already available to you. So we've made it very, very easy to do those core use cases around Agent Assist, as an example, provided you are already using the platform.
In the environment.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
But I mean, obviously, I understand that there's so many use cases. One has to zoom into the
Mhm.
best use case. But I also believe, and you described that the people, the teams, and the departments of the different areas, business areas that are linked to these contact centers, they have to jointly come in and decide what makes sense in order to implement. And that will be business people for sure, but it might be engineers, IT
Yep.
people. If we're talking about a larger organization, it can be data scientists, it can be, all sorts of people. In financial services, it can be business people and compliance and
Yep. Absolutely.
legal people. And they need to see the unit economics, because they need to understand what is the cost of training these models, because at least for the large parameter, large language models, we all understand that they're expensive, right? But here, have you seen in practice, in financial services or other comparable business areas, do the unit economics work? Or are we talking about, okay, this is too expensive to implement if you have a contact center, whether if you're a universal bank like Bank of America, JP Morgan, or at least a national bank?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of proof points. The short answer is yes, it does make economic sense, and in a big way. I'll use an example first of Ally Bank because it's a public case
Yeah.
study that I can talk about. And so Ally Bank's first use case was really the two that we talked about. It was automating agent rapid notes and being able to uh, use real-time knowledge search against policies procedures that happen to be in multiple different silos, not just in CRM as an example. And so they have found after implementation that even on the agent wrap-up note side, that 85% plus of all summarizations and actions are perfectly done, which means that only 10 to 15%-ish, and it continues to improve, by the way, of time, the agents are actually having to go and just tweak, not type things and
Edit,
tweak. So right,
edit, sort of.
just edit. Yeah, exactly. And so if you think about the business case on that, and let's just kind of paint a picture and how we're seeing it. So imagine that your overall agent handle time is 10 minutes. So that's comprised of three things, right? Idle time between calls, talk time, and wrap up time. Let's say out of that 10 minutes, wrap up time is roughly 20%. when we talk to customers, it's usually between 10 and 20%. So just to make it easy, we'll call it 20% for now. And now, if you're going to say that even 50% of that 20% is automated, which Alibank has done 85%. So let's just make it really conservative and say 50%. That's 1 minute saved off your overall handle time. Now multiply that by the number of contacts that you get, right, across, every day, and it's thousands and thousands, if not millions, right, across the number of agents that you have. That is a significant saving. That's a 10% reduction, right? And so now you've got a 10% reduction, and then you think about things like that's just on wrap-up notes. But wait, when an agent is having a conversation, they're talking to a customer, and Efi, I'm not sure if you've done this for a while, but hopefully most of our callers have, been with their agents and, watched them do what they do. And especially in financial services, they're kind of like magicians because they often have multiple applications running, green screens, legacy systems, CRMs, all sorts of stuff. And they have to have a great conversation. And these conversations are getting more and more complex because customers are going online and doing their thing. So when they talk to an agent, they're pretty well educated. So it's tough. And if you have agents that have to take notes at the same time, remove that thing where they have to take notes, right? And now they're just having the conversation and maybe navigating some systems, but you've now saved them from having to do something during the call, which is going to cut down on that talk time. So if we just assume for a second that it's only the 50% savings on the wrap-up time, which we know we've proven it's way more than that, but let's just take that 10% overall AHT reduction. If you model that out, it's a massive savings. And to give you a perspective on price point as an example, so we announced just a couple of weeks ago our general availability of Copilot for Service. And Copilot for Service does those two things and more, by the way. And it also attaches to any CRM, not just Dynamics. But it's $50 a month per agent. Okay. Yeah. And so if you do the math just on that $50 a month per agent, your return on investment, you knock it out of the park. And again, that's just on the 10% savings. So the proof is in the pudding. And the great thing is it's so easy for any contact center leader to be able to put that down on a piece of paper and clearly articulate that. And then because they only have to put the 10% of like the half of the wrap-up notes, being able to prove that is easy. We always talk about, under promising and over delivering. This is one of those great examples where it's totally obvious. And then they can show the entire organization the value of generative AI. So it's a great place to start. And of course, you can always start in contact centers with smaller lines of businesses everywhere to start. So that's a really key example. The other one I would bring out is in our own Microsoft contact centers, we have about 45,000 agents all around the world, different languages, lots of different lines of businesses, contact centers, really difficult calls, especially think about, a customer call and talking about, engineers on these calls. And we've found that out of the gate, across those 45,000 agents, we've gone between 10% of savings, overall AHT and savings around that is incredible. Why? Because agents talk to other agents and they saw how the ones that were using it, the value was bringing to them, making their jobs better. And so rather than, we had to push it out, very quickly it became a pull, and we started to deploy to thousands of agents a day. We've never, ever seen anything like that. It absolutely game-changing. So super exciting. Long story, but this is where we have real proof points around some great cases of how it's working.
And I understand that call centers typically have a very high attrition rate and out and so on. And then that, of course, is an extra cost for the business because you have to hire new people and you have to retrain them and so on. So I imagine that over, the next couple of months and years, there'll be even more value because of a reduction, I assume, in attrition if the agents at the contact centers have better working conditions, and they will probably offer better customer service because they're not, burnt out with too much mundane but huge overload of process requests, and they'll be able to do a better job for more complex stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tyler, can I ask you, is Gen AI also capable of assisting agents to figure out faster and better the intent of the caller and the urgency of the situation to handle it better, or we're not there yet?
We are absolutely. So this is about customer intent, customer context. So it starts actually before the conversation gets to the agent, whether it's a chat or whether it's
Yeah.
a voice phone call. And so when that customer contacts the organization in whatever modality they choose to do that, what do we know about the customer, right? So hopefully we can authenticate them. And ideally, we use something like our nuanced gatekeeper voice biometrics to authenticate them, for example, in the IVR, or they've authenticated online or in mobile. And so we know something about them. And so a big part of AI is to come in and say, okay, hold on a second. Let's not do rules. Let's not group these as, they look like other customers, but rather let's personalize and understand based on that specific customer, their past interaction, what we know about things that might be happening in their lives, all sorts of different parameters that we can bring to the table. And then let's understand then how to route them. And what's really important here is, and this is a huge part of generative AI, where traditionally, I think when we think about self-service, we've asked ourselves, hey, could I self-service? It looks like the customer wants to, transfer some funds or they want to make a bill payment. Should I do that? Really do that well in self-service? And I'm not sure. And to be fair, a lot of the self-service, especially against the transactions, just don't work very well, right? And so with generative AI, because it's truly conversational, and again, you don't have to build manual intents anymore. It's not going to be a question of could I do that in self-service, but rather should I do that in self-service? And when I say that, it's about what do I know, for example, about Efi because she's calling in, and do I want to pull her out of self-service and have her speak to an agent because we believe there's value in doing that where the agent can have a really good conversation to better understand and support your needs. This is the game changer pivot of how we think about, contact centers, what goes to an agent. So by the time the conversation goes to an agent, now we're really routing based off of what we know individually about those customers that are calling in, as well potentially about the agents themselves and which one is really able to handle that call. So it's really about that, skills-based routing, but even more so like really personal things about the agent, how they're going to engage. And do we have one that can actually do that, which makes sense to bring it to an agent? And then the other thing we can do is as we, enable the agent to understand what's going on, we can help them pivot. So this is where, for example, if we thought we had the right intent of the customer to come in, we brought it to an agent, but maybe the customer is getting frustrated. And so we can do real-time sentiment and show the agent that. And then we can do a next best action to the agent. So we can give them, some suggestions on different paths and things to say to help them do their jobs and have a much better conversation in a faster way. And then we can automate things that are happening on the desktop between applications using things like robotic process automation so the agent can really focus on having that good conversation. There's so much more, but this is how I think the whole system comes together to be able to enable the agents to have a great conversation with their customers and to do it in a much faster way. Often within banks, as an example, we've seen time to proficiency anywhere between 3 months to 9 months, depending on some of the queues. And so that's really difficult, especially when you've got an average attrition each year of 50 to 60%. How do you do that? So if we can shorten that onboarding time, the training time, make them have good conversations, give them all the tools they need, and the right conversations with the right customers, everybody wins. And Gen AI plays a huge role in every single area that we just talked about.
Amazing. I mean, I can start envisioning what this can do in business areas like in loans, lending, mortgages,
Hmm.
and so on, where there's more elaborate conversations typically going on, and often, I mean, I don't know a lot of people that choose the contact centers and instead go, have to go physically to a branch to discuss whatever they need to discuss. And this can be a game changer for both
Hmm.
the end clients and the institutions to shift these interactive conversations, not only digitally, but also to deal with them in a great customer service way. Definitely. I mean, we could be talking about this. I'm getting excited and I can see this, in our future, even in small and medium business, helping, you know, at the end of the day, any professional receiving a call from an existing client, it's like a contact center in a
Right.
very niche area. And we could see that, being available as technology for everyone, everywhere, starting obviously from these call centers. What are the risks we have to talk about currently? What are the risks and challenges to deploying these at the contact center level?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, a lot of our customers are starting with that agent assist layer so that they can, I would say, take the potential risks of the generative AI providing what we call hallucinations
Yeah,
out of the equation. So it's a great place to test and learn. And it really comes down again to the data piece, right? So if what we found is that, if we are providing, customers are providing the right data sets, their own policies and information is correct to the large language model, and then effectively for the chatbot or the voice bot to use, whether it's agent assist chatbot or otherwise, that's where we're seeing success. And so I think that the view of is it going to say the wrong things, suggest the wrong things to agents as part of next best action, as an example, or provide the wrong agent wrap-up notes, we're actually seeing that that's not as high of a risk as I think we originally thought it might be. But it really is centered around making sure those, the data that we feed it is accurate. And when I say feed it, it's just like, did you point it to your right knowledge base? Is that knowledge base right? So, the flip side of that, of course, is if agents were using that knowledge base to search up for policies and procedures and they were wrong, they were saying the wrong thing to the customer anyway. So you're not really adding any risk, but it still takes some time to do that. And actually, as part of, testing this out, customers are actually finding things and
yeah.
fixing them.
Okay.
So it
It's
actually
like
is doing
cleaning
good.
up house, right? Spring
Right.
cleaning because of
Yeah,
generative AI, right? It's kind of pushing them to check and see what their data architecture, their data updates, and so on. I can imagine, especially in the area of regulation and compliance, which is
that's right.
and never, how can I say, it's a dynamic area, right? That you can never be sure that you have everything that you need to have and that it is correct. And this type of automation, if you want, forces you to check all these and get them in order. Tyler, our conversation could go on, for hours, and it was really exciting to hear from you all these deep dives in what may seem to some a really easy and not so important level in the business, but it is both because of the customer experience, but also because of the return that the businesses can get with learning generative AI and in such a quick fashion also,
Right.
which is also amazing. So before we close, tell us what you're excited about beyond contact centers and financial services these days.
Yeah, AI in general is just fascinating how fast it's organizations around the world are thinking about it. I love cars as an example. I love that Mercedes-Benz has deployed generative AI as a chat bot, effectively a voice bot rather within their car. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And so that whole experience, the whole driving experience is going to change. And when we think about what, vehicle autonomy is, that's amazing. Walmart the other day released effectively a way to trying on clothes and then sharing them as part of a social community and how to shop. The Super Bowl's coming up. And so now when I go shopping for, what I need for the Super Bowl, I just have to type in, hey, I'm having a Super Bowl party. What kind of things should I get? And it just tells me those things. It creates menus for me. The ability to think about where this is being used across so many industries and things that I, as an individual, as a consumer, I like to use, it's just fascinating. And what's cool is really we've been only on this journey for like maybe 12 months
Yeah.
and how fast things have evolved. It's really becoming everywhere. And so, I'm super excited about that. The other thing I'm really excited about too is, that learning curve of supporting individuals. I'll give you an example. In schools, having a generative AI ability to have as a real-time coach for students starting to roll out, especially in some, developing economies. The other thing I'm really excited about too is, my son's a big gamer, and we always kind of give him a hard time for playing too many video games. But one of the cool things that I've seen recently is, leveraging a virtual player that can play with kids, for example, in Minecraft, that's powered by generative AI, having full-on conversations. So you go in through the game, just incredible stuff. And then take that a step further. We're also seeing generative AI support those with sight disabilities because it can describe what's happening in the game. So now you're really, opening things up to individuals that couldn't play like they used to. So again, those are just a few examples of where AI is transforming industries all around us that we're a part of. And I'm just so excited to be along for the ride.
It is really exciting. And clearly, generative AI has made AI qualify really as a general purpose technology, which economists have been, looking at these general purpose technologies, be it the steam engine, electricity, and so on, for years, and calling them GPTs. Now we can't say GPT because, chat GPT, but it is a GPT technology. And part of what you said, it's so pervasive and evolving so fast. And it's like nobody needed to push it to us as individuals, as businesses, and so on. It's like we are sitting there and saying, give me more, give me
Right.
more. I wish I could integrate it in all sorts of flows, workflows, and in lifestyle, because it's just mind-boggling with the challenges and the risks. But it's really, and I'm very excited about the applications in health, in the research that we're already seeing, in terms of discovering new, what they call proteins, and the ingredients to design personal medication is just unbelievable. And the impact, I really believe that this will have a huge impact on the 17 SDG goals globally and soon. So we're all excited. Thank you so much, Tyler, for this awesome conversation.
My pleasure, Efi. I love the examples you gave, and you're right. We're on the cusp of just so many more great things. Super exciting.